What I'm about to share with you is not breaking news, but it is big news nonetheless. And there is a big lesson that we can learn from this because it could happen to you. Let's talk about it as we explore. I had no idea that this huge confiscation of 5,000 ounces of gold had occurred, but indeed it did. I first learned of this very recently by a member of this community, and I found this quite fascinating. It just goes to show you the lesson of if you don't hold it, you don't own it, and how true that is. For sure, there's some staggering statistics I'm going to share with you in this story. But first, I want to remind you of channel sponsor Summit Metals. They have competitive prices and great service. Check them out for yourself over at summitmetals.com. I'm going to be referencing an article here from Time Magazine. That's right, the one and the only Time Magazine back when it was in print. This is dated October the 9th, 1933. That's right. That's how far back we're going, and you probably have some idea as to what this is about just by the date alone. On October the 11th, 1932, an elderly Manhattan attorney named Frederick Barber Campbell marched into Chase National Bank, followed by an armed guard trundling 13 bars of gold. Mr. Campbell had just drawn this bullion from the Federal Reserve Bank in return for gold certificates. I'm going to stop right there because that's pretty intriguing. He had gold certificates and had it exchanged at the Federal Reserve Bank for gold. Yeah, these are actually bars that are worth approximately $5,000 at the time. That's right. One of these small bars here is worth twice that much. And so that just goes to show you now where the price of gold is now compared to what it was back then. They don't say what the weight of those bars are, but likely, probably, given the amount of gold at that time, it was certainly very much well into maybe even the standard bar size of about 400 ounces. I don't know. It's very intriguing to think about it. In fact, if we do the math on that, if we assume they're a contract delivery size bar, if we divide that by 400, 5,000 by 400, that would be $12.50 per ounce. So likely that's probably not the case. So probably they're less than that or what have you. But nonetheless, each bar has been cast by the U.S. Treasury and bore its stamp and number. Lawyer Campbell, who is an attorney, by the way, arranged for the Chase Bank to act as hired custodian for his bullion. Chase Bank, the same one that is now called J.P. Morgan Chase, and that's the one. And we know about J.P. Morgan and precious metals, don't we? On January the 25th, 1933, and this is before the executive order was released, by the way, Mr. Campbell again appeared at Chase National Bank with 14 more gold bars, which were stowed away in the vault with the first batch. By gold standard reckoning, his deposit of metal accounted to $135,000. It's a lot of money back then, no question about it. On March the 9th, Congress passed the Emergency Banking Act, which empowered the president to call all gold into the Treasury, with heavy penalties for those who disobeyed his orders. At that time, $1,400,000,000 ounce of dollars worth of gold was in circulation. Most of it had been hoarded. In the next 30 days, more than one-third of this was turned into the Treasury. Think about that for a moment. A third of that, after the executive order was released in April, was turned in within 30 days of the $1.4 billion worth in circulation. That's amazing. Now, they said it was hoarded, but I think we can exchange that term for stacked. That's right. They stacked it. Hoarding has a negative connotation, but of course, this was Time Magazine. And of course, this was after the Federal Reserve Act was enacted And so, therefore, they really didn't want to put that much credence to gold. And of course, I think they put a big target on the back, and realizing that what gold is. And certainly, this attorney, Mr. Campbell, understood this. On April the 5th, President Roosevelt issued his executive order 6102, requiring holders of gold to turn it into the Treasury in exchange for paper currency under penalty of 10 years imprisonment and $10,000 fine. Very stiff penalties. Department of Justice agents began visiting known hoarders or stackers who to date have surrendered. This is, by the way, to date was the date of this article. Again, I remind you, this was on October 9th, 1933. That is the current event from which we are referencing here. And requiring these people to turn it in. So they, to date, have surrendered $38,901,009 worth of gold so far. And so think about it. They knew who these people were, and they began visiting them from agents from the Department of Justice. Wow. And who would have thought that back then they would have known who some of these people were, because there were receipts from transactions done. And there weren't enough boats around for a boating accident to occur. You know what I'm talking about there. Crazy. Wow. During this same period, unknown hoarders or stackers have given up more than $300 million worth of gold. Attorney General Cummings issued threat of prosecution against recalcitrants who still held $560,201,000 worth of gold. And think about it. This is a $20 gold coin. So they're talking in terms of dollars, but really, reality, this is $20 worth of gold right here back then. That's right, $20.67 per ounce, because this is 0.96 ounces of gold. But you could only hold 5 of these in your possession at that time in order to be legal and have that as part of the savings, or it must be collectible gold. But that gives you a little bit of an insight as to what the time was back then, or what was going on at the time. So on August the 28th of that same year, 1933, President Roosevelt issued another order requiring every possessor of gold to register his holdings with the Treasury before the 18th of September. Those who failed to do so were also punished by 10 years imprisonment and $10,000 fine. So that means everybody, including those who I think had these 5 of these coins, had to register it with the Treasury. Boy, you talk about draconian. You want to talk about something that, if that were to happen these days, what the kind of media outcry there would be. And I know not the major media, but nonetheless, there's enough media out there that now that this would be a big, big deal. And it was a big deal back then, obviously, because this guy, who was a lawyer, Campbell, on September the 16th, appeared at Chase National Bank, demanded his 27 bars of gold. The bank told him that under the law, it could not deliver them to him, but would have to surrender them to the government in accordance with the president's orders. So on September the 26th, 10 days later, Mr. Campbell started a civil suit in Manhattan Federal Court to compel the bank to release his gold deposits. In his petition, he argued that the president's orders, which prevented him from regaining his property, were unconstitutional. Although there was legislation that gave him the power to do it, but really it does fly against the face of the actual Constitution. Article 1, Section 10. We all know it very well that nothing but gold and silver can be used as legal tender. So on September the 27th, after an 18-minute session, a federal grand jury in Manhattan indicted Frederick Barber Campbell for failing to register gold now valued at $200,574.34 before the 18th of September, as required by the August 28 order. Also imminent was a second indictment charging actual hoarding of gold in violation of the April 5th order 6102. Thus, last week, And by the way, last week, again, I got to remind you, I'm reading from an article dated October the 9th, 1933. So we're talking about very early October at this point. Wow. So that was President Roosevelt's whole gold policy starting on its winding way to the Supreme Court for a major test on constitutionality. If defendant Campbell is convicted by a jury and the Supreme Court sustains his conviction, the Department of Justice will be on solid legal ground to move against some 30,000 citizens who have so far defied the president's gold orders. That's 30,000 citizens that the government knew, quote, hoarded gold or stacked gold. And it makes you wonder today, do they know that we hold gold? Now, obviously, they could probably do a little digging and find receipts of those of us who have purchased if we have any kind of paper trail at all whatsoever. But then again, most of us can say, well, we sold it all. Or the old phrase, we lost it in a boating accident. And nonetheless, the maritime excuse back then would not have flown, that's for sure. If defendant Campbell wins a Supreme Court appeal, the administration's whole gold program will be set at naught, and President Roosevelt will have to start all over again, conserving the Treasury's gold supply. That was the goal he had there. In defendant Campbell, the government picked for this test not only the largest gold hoarder on its list, but also a respectable lawyer whom prosecutor Mendeley called exceedingly able. Born in Brooklyn, Mr. Campbell was graduated from Harvard Law School in 1894. Now, I did some basic calculation that probably would have put him being born maybe perhaps around 1870, which means he probably would have been 62, 63 years old at the time of this occurrence. He was, as a director of U.S. and British insurance companies, belongs to such swank Manhattan clubs as Union Metropolitan, which is where he lives, and Century. Where he filed his civil suit against the Chase Bank, he well knew he was inviting the government to prosecute. His argument in the suit will become his defense in the criminal action, to wit, 1. Congress has no constitutional power to delegate its legislative authority over gold to the president. And 2, the president is prevented by the Fifth Due Process of Law Amendment to the Constitution from depriving him of his property under the Fifth Amendment, not under the Fourth Amendment under search and seizures, which goes to show you that this is a smart lawyer. That's an intriguing and calculating case he's making here. The property in this case is not only the gold bars in the Chase vault, but his $65,000 paper profit inciting to the rise of gold from $20 to $31 per troy ounce. And I knew it went from $20.67 up to $35, but I think there was one time when it did go up to $31, and that may have been the case. And that just goes to show you about the bait and switch of what the government does. And this is why you should not trust government at any cost, much less all costs. It's crazy. Yeah, man, paper profit indeed. Good on Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell, who promptly pleaded not guilty to the indictment and was released on $1,000 bail because no moral turpitude was involved in the charge, was thoroughly aware of the risk he was running in this contest with the government. If convicted, he could have been disbarred, fined $10,000, imprisoned for 10 years, but he intimidated, making a fight for his constitutional rights, and I quote here, "If I have to go to jail, I don't care." Good on him. It turns out that that case was essentially dropped. Reading it further, in fact, there's what we have here, that this was 160 kilograms of gold of over 5,000 troy ounces. When Campbell attempted to withdraw the gold, Chase refused, and Campbell sued Chase. And then we saw that September the 27th for failing to surrender the gold. Ultimately, the prosecution of Campbell failed, but the authority of the federal government to seize gold was upheld, and Campbell's gold was confiscated. That's it. It was gone. And I don't know if he was compensated for the original $20.67 an ounce. My guess is probably he was. but nonetheless, he's out that profit. And it's amazing. And I tell you what, I want to thank members of this audience who, share cool little tidbits of information like this. But, the one thing, the lesson here we can learn from this is that don't hold if you do hold gold in another custodian, that's fine, but understand that there could and will be some risk. It's called counterparty risk. So it's always good to have some gold in your possession, or silver, or both. But nonetheless, notwithstanding, there is risk in holding yourself. It's called single-party risk. So make sure you understand that as well, too. Single-party risk is something that is not talked about much in this community, but I've talked about it extensively. And that's essentially being secure from the threat of being stolen and the threat of your person and property from theft. So you got to be very, very careful. You have surveillance all around, inside and outside. You have weaponry and ammo in every single room of the house, so that in case somebody comes in while you're there, you can stop them and kill them, as you should do if a stranger enters your home. And 3, you should have lots of protection. Keep it quiet, keep it safe, keep it locked up and in an inconspicuous place. So important. And the better secure you are, the better off you're going to be to minimize that single-party risk. So there you have it. Very important and a piece of history that I wanted to share with you. And thanks again to many of you in this community who share with me knowledge like this that I can take and share with the rest of you. Now, gold was illegal to have up until December the 31st, 1974 was the last day. The only kind of gold you can get in 1 ounce form was this, the Krugerrand. And it was very, very popular, and that's what led to the impetus of the United States creating the Gold Eagle program, which was started in 1986 from legislation from 1985. But it became legal to own gold again on January 1 of 1975, and it's pretty intriguing indeed. In fact, I have the first piece of publicly available gold that you could buy is this. That's right, from Panama. This is a pretty cool piece. I showed this in a previous video, and that was the one that you could allow to be able to own here. And the first day of minting after December the 31st, 1974, was this, the government's 41-year ban on the ownership of modern gold coins. And there you go. And this was the first, so there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative, insightful, and educational. We'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate this video. That means press that thumbs up button, share it on other social media platforms, comment, and subscribe.